Did you know that most people are completely unaware of what is about to happen to the global economy? While we go about our daily routines, the signs of a silent crisis are piling up. A bubble about to burst, similar to the biggest in history, but with a much more devastating potential impact. In this video, we're going to dive into the strategies of the world's greatest investors, like Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, to understand how they prepare for moments like this, and, more importantly, how you can do the same. After decades of following the markets and analyzing the decisions of billionaire investors, a clear pattern emerges. A pattern that the rich follow before downturns, and that most people ignore. If you want to protect your wealth, understand what's coming, and act intelligently, this video is for you. The invisible problem: the economy in a critical phase. The global economy is entering dangerous territory, and most people still haven't realized it. What appears to be a period of stability, with record-breaking markets and governments providing stimulus, is actually hiding a collapse in the making. Over the past few decades, countries like the United States, Japan, and much of Europe have adopted expansive monetary policies, relying on relentless money printing. Governments create trillions out of thin air to support struggling economies, and for a while, it even seems to work. People receive benefits, businesses stay afloat, and the stock market soars like never before. But there's a hidden cost, and it always arrives. This cost appears in the form of inflation, currency devaluation, asset price distortions, and eventually, social and political collapse. With every new cycle of money printing, the real value of money decreases. You feel it every time you go to the supermarket and realize that your salary buys less than it used to. Historically, whenever a country overdoes money printing, the result is the same: a deep crisis. And what's most alarming is that this time, it's happening simultaneously in the world's largest economies. What used to be the exception has become the rule. What was once an emergency measure has become routine. Additionally, central banks have become hostages to their own decisions. By keeping interest rates low for so long, they've created artificial market dependence on constant stimulus. When they try to reverse course, like raising rates to fight inflation, they trigger instability in banks, credit, and investments. The false sense of prosperity induced by monetary expansion also leads to risky behavior. Companies accumulate more debt, investors make impulsive decisions, and governments postpone structural reforms. It's like trying to plug a massive hole with printed money. But this unbacked money only masks the problem. The situation becomes even more critical when we consider the social impact. The middle class, which holds part of its savings in local currency, is the first to be hit. Their salaries lose purchasing power, their investments can't keep up with inflation, and their upward mobility disappears. What's left is frustration, debt, and a perfect environment for the rise of populist promises. We are living what Charlie Munger called uncharted territory, an artificially inflated economy sustained by fragile political decisions and the illusion that prosperity can be printed. But this bubble won't last forever. Lessons from the past. What history has already shown us. The coming crisis may seem unprecedented, but the warning signs are eerily familiar. History is filled with examples of economies that tried to thrive by printing money, and all ended the same way: in collapse. One of the most emblematic cases is the Weimar Republic in Germany, shortly after World War I. To pay off war debts, the German government resorted to rampant money printing. For a brief period, it gave the economy a boost, but soon prices exploded. Inflation turned into hyperinflation. A loaf of bread that once cost a few marks soon cost millions. Money became utterly worthless. Families carried wheelbarrows of banknotes just to buy basic food. And the result? Economic collapse, the impoverishment of the middle class, and fertile ground for the rise of a totalitarian regime. A similar situation unfolded in Venezuela, After years of mismanagement and fiscal populism, the country plunged into one of the worst inflationary crises of the century. Banknotes were discarded in the streets. Basic goods disappeared from shelves. The impoverished population scavenged for food in the trash. The cause? The same: excessive money printing without a corresponding increase in productivity. Argentina also faces ongoing cycles of monetary instability. Every time it tries to control its economy by printing pesos, the outcome is the same: inflation, capital flight, and loss of trust. The lesson keeps repeating, but it's rarely learned. These examples all have one thing in common: short-term political decisions fueled by populist interests that sacrifice the future for immediate relief. Printing money doesn't fix structural problems. It only delays the inevitable and worsens the fall. But there's one case that stands out: Japan. Since the 1990s, the country has pursued continuous monetary stimulus, with near-zero interest rates and massive expansion of its monetary base. And surprisingly, it hasn't collapsed like the others. Why? The answer lies in Japanese culture: fiscal discipline, a high savings rate, strong social control over consumption, and a highly productive economy. Even so, the country lives in economic stagnation and carries a monumental public debt, showing that despite its resilience, this strategy also comes at a cost. History is clear: unlimited money printing is never a solution. It may seem effective in the short term, but it inevitably demands a price. The past is a mirror of the future, and the reflection we see now is troubling: the behavior of modern governments. What makes today's situation even more dangerous isn't just the scale of the economic problem, but the way political leaders have been handling it. Instead of confronting the imbalances head-on, most choose to kick the can down the road, trying to buy time and popularity. We live in an era where unpopular decisions are avoided at all costs. Raising interest rates, cutting spending, reviewing privileges, all of these measures are politically toxic. As a result, governments take the easier route, printing more money, expanding stimulus programs, and continuing to spend as if there were no consequences. The problem is, the longer this approach is sustained, the more fragile the economic structure becomes. It's like building a house on sand. The foundation might hold for a while, but collapse is inevitable. And when it comes, it will be far more devastating than if we had made the necessary adjustments at the right time. A classic example is the contrast between the 1980s and today. Back then, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Paul Volcker, raised U.S. interest rates to nearly 20% to combat inflation. The move was drastic, triggered a painful recession, and sparked strong public opposition. But it worked. Inflation was brought under control, and the economy stabilized in the long run. Today, it's hard to imagine any monetary authority doing the same. The fear of protests, falling approval ratings, and immediate political backlash paralyzes courageous decisions. Today's leaders seem more concerned with pleasing in the present than preserving the future. This behavior creates a vicious cycle. To avoid economic pain, artificial stimulus is created. To sustain that stimulus, more money is printed. And the more money is printed, the more inflation grows. And when it spins out of control, the cost to tame it becomes unbearable. Worse yet, this lack of discipline sends a dangerous message to society: that there are no real consequences for irresponsible decisions. This encourages similar behavior in businesses and individuals: excessive debt, impulsive consumption, and investments driven by hype rather than fundamentals. The world is being governed with a short-term mindset, but finance, whether personal or public, is a marathon, not a 100-meter sprint. And every step off course makes future recovery harder and more painful. The silent bubble: how the market is inflated. While governments print money and push debt into the future, the financial market is experiencing artificial euphoria. On the surface, everything seems fine. Stock markets hit record highs, companies are valued in the trillions, and amateur investors flood social media, convinced that getting rich has never been easier. But behind this optimism, a bubble is forming. Large, silent, and highly unstable. A financial bubble occurs when asset prices, stocks, real estate, startups, rise far beyond their real value. This is usually driven by excess liquidity in the system and irrational confidence that this time is different. People start buying not because the asset is good, but because everyone else is buying. And this herd mentality feeds itself until the bubble bursts. That's exactly what we're seeing today. The market is being driven by low interest rates, monetary stimulus, and a tsunami of newly created money from central banks. This money, instead of generating real growth in the economy, has flowed into financial assets. The result is a dangerous distortion. Poorly valued companies with sky-high prices, and investors believing the rally will last forever. To grasp the size of this bubble, look at the Buffett indicator, a simple metric that compares the total value of the stock market to the country's gross domestic product, GDP. When this indicator exceeds 100%, it suggests the market is overvalued. Before the 2008 crisis, it was at 117%. In 2024, it reached 210%. This means the market was worth more than double the country's actual output, a massive anomaly. Another clear symptom of the bubble is the behavior of investment funds. Many managers buy stocks not because they believe in them, but because they need to justify their management fees. With more money flowing into passive funds and ETFs, prices rise automatically, even when fundamentals don't support them. There's also the rise of irrational diversification. Instead of studying and selecting quality assets, many investors spread their money across dozens or even hundreds of companies, believing this protects them. But over-diversifying without criteria is like driving blindfolded and thinking you're safe just because you're wearing a seatbelt. The current bubble is silent because it looks stable. But like all bubbles, it bursts when confidence disappears. And that usually happens suddenly, triggered by an unexpected event or a shift in market sentiment. When it happens, the house of cards will start to fall. That's why recognizing this distortion now is critical. Investors who ignore these signs, as many did in 2000 and 2008, will be the ones who suffer the most. Buffett and Munger's strategy. While most investors are driven by emotion, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger follow a very different path: logic, patience, and preparation. They don't try to predict the future. They prefer to prepare for it. And this mindset has made them two of the greatest investors in history, with results that speak for themselves. In recent years, while markets were hitting all-time highs and analysts were praising a new economy, Buffett adopted a quiet but highly revealing strategy. He started selling. Since late 2022, his company, Berkshire Hathaway, began systematically reducing its holdings. Throughout 2023 and 2024, it sold over $120 billion worth of assets, a move many overlooked, but one that carries a powerful message. Something is out of place. What's most interesting is that Buffett wasn't selling bad companies. Quite the opposite. He reduced his stakes in giants like Apple and Bank of America, even though he believes in the quality of those businesses. What he saw wasn't a problem with fundamentals. It was with prices. He recognized that the market had inflated valuations beyond reason and chose to exit before the crash. At the same time, Buffett built a massive cash reserve. Today, Berkshire Hathaway holds more than $324 billion in liquidity. Why is that important? Because while most investors panic during a crisis and sell assets at any price, Buffett will be ready to buy. It's what he calls having ammunition when others are retreating. But he didn't just sell and wait. He made strategic moves. He heavily invested in sectors with a history of resilience during crises. One example is Occidental Petroleum in the energy sector. Buffett knows that regardless of the crisis, demand for energy won't disappear. People will still need gasoline, electricity, heating. Another sector he focused on was essential consumer goods. Companies that sell food, hygiene products, and medicine tend to remain stable even in hard times. It's no coincidence that Buffett increased his positions in companies like Coca-Cola, Kraft Heinz, and Procter and Gamble. Surprisingly, he also invested in the alcoholic beverage industry through Constellation Brands, owner of beer and wine labels. The logic? Even during recessions, people continue consuming alcohol. It's a social behavior that remains steady even when the economy crashes. Additionally, Buffett has always been critical of excessive diversification. For him, if you find 4 or 5 excellent companies, that's enough to yield great results. He prefers to invest heavily in opportunities he deeply understands, rather than spread money across dozens of average businesses. Charlie Munger, Buffett's longtime partner, reinforces this philosophy with a famous quote: "It's better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a mediocre one at a great price." What unites the two isn't just intelligence, it's mindset. They don't follow the market. They watch, analyze, and only act when there's a clear margin of safety. That discipline is what protects them in the most chaotic moments. While many chase shortcuts or flashy strategies, Buffett and Munger remain faithful to principles that have always worked. Understand what you're buying, act rationally, and patiently wait for the right opportunities. The true power of cash. Many believe that keeping money idle is a waste. After all, money that isn't invested doesn't generate returns. But Buffett thinks differently, and his track record proves it. To him, cash is not dead weight. It's a strategic weapon. And in the right moments, that weapon becomes a brutal competitive advantage. In normal times, holding large amounts of liquid cash might seem overly conservative. But in times of crisis, that money becomes gold, literally. Cash allows you to buy valuable assets when everyone else is panic selling. And it also protects the investor from having to liquidate good positions to cover emergencies. Buffett has explained this many times. He doesn't keep billions in cash because he's afraid of the market. He keeps it because he knows markets are cyclical. Eventually, everything that's expensive today will become cheap. And when that happens, most investors will be in despair, trying to offload their assets, just as he will be ready to buy. This move requires discipline, it requires patience, and above all, it requires preparation. Because cash is only useful if it's intentional. You must resist the temptation to invest in just anything to avoid letting it sit. Buffett prefers to wait months, even years, for an opportunity with a margin of safety. And when it appears, he acts quickly. Moreover, cash serves as protection against the unpredictable. Pandemics, wars, bank failures, market crashes, all these events happen unexpectedly. And those who are leveraged or 100% invested become hostages to the system. But those who have liquidity can navigate turbulence much more safely. Here's the practical lesson. Even if you don't have billions like Buffett, maintaining a liquid emergency fund can be the difference between seizing an opportunity and being forced to sell at the worst time. It's not about stopping investments. It's about having a strategy, about planning the right moment to act. Buffett often says that time is a friend of wonderful businesses, but an enemy of mediocre ones. And to wait for the right time, you need cash. It's what gives you the power of choice and freedom of movement, where the current risks lie. Identifying where the risks are now is essential for any investor looking to protect themselves from what's coming. And Warren Buffett has already made it clear where he sees the greatest danger: in the technology sector, the banking system, and the real estate market. 3 pillars of the modern economy, all under threat, starting with technology. In recent years, companies like Apple, Tesla, Meta, and Nvidia have seen astonishing valuations. But in many cases, Stock prices have grown much faster than profits or real value creation. That's a classic sign of a bubble. Investors are paying far too much based on unrealistic expectations of continued growth. And when the market starts to correct those excesses, the crash becomes inevitable. Buffett, who historically avoided tech stocks, made an exception for Apple, but even that position he has started to reduce. This doesn't mean he no longer believes in the company. It means the price was beyond reasonable. And, as he always says, you don't pay any price, even for a great business. The second red flag is the banking sector. Despite being a longtime supporter of major financial institutions, Buffett has been reducing his exposure to banks like Bank of America. And the reason is simple. Risks are rising. With interest rates going up to fight inflation, many institutions are suffering from higher credit costs, rising defaults, and a loss of client confidence. Moreover, the structure of the modern banking system is highly exposed to market volatility. A rumor, a mass withdrawal, or a poor management decision can bring down a bank in just days, as we've seen in recent episodes in the US and Europe. The third obvious risk is in real estate. During the pandemic, with ultra-low interest rates and generous stimulus, property prices surged in many parts of the world. Homes, apartments, and commercial properties were sold for absurd values. But now, with rising interest rates, financing costs have gone up, demand is falling, and prices are beginning to drop. Buffett knows the real estate sector is extremely sensitive to the cost of money. When interest rates rise, loans become more expensive, sales volumes drop, and owners are forced to lower prices to sell. This can create a domino effect, especially in countries where many people bought real estate at the edge of their income. These three sectors, tech, banks, and real estate, are interconnected. If one collapses, the others will feel the impact. A crash in tech can drag down stock indexes and erode investor confidence. A banking crisis can choke credit and stall the economy. A real estate bubble burst can affect consumption, savings, and household stability. That's why Buffett isn't just protecting his wealth. He's positioning himself strategically to act when prices become more realistic. And we, as individual investors, need to watch the same signals. The risks are no longer hidden. They're right in front of us, visible, urgent, and connected. How the average investor should respond. Faced with such a challenging scenario, it's natural for the average investor to ask, "What can I do?" After all, not everyone has billions to move around like Buffett. But the truth is, the principles that guide the great investors can and should be applied by anyone. The first step is recognizing that doing nothing is also a choice, and often the worst one. Remaining paralyzed, hoping things will resolve on their own, is what causes many people to miss opportunities or suffer unnecessary losses. You must act, but with strategy. The first practical recommendation is to evaluate your current portfolio honestly. What assets are most exposed to risk? Stocks of overvalued companies? Funds tied to fragile sectors like tech or banks? Real estate bought with high credit leverage? All of these require attention. Reducing exposure to assets that have risen too much without justification may be the first step toward protecting your capital. Second, it's essential to build or reinforce your emergency fund. This protects your personal finances and ensures you have liquidity to take advantage of good opportunities in the future. Don't underestimate the power of cash. Next, consider reallocating part of your investments to more resilient sectors. Companies that provide essential products and services, such as food, healthcare, energy, and sanitation, tend to weather crises better. These assets are usually less volatile and offer more predictable returns. Another key attitude: avoid emotionally driven decisions. Don't try to time the market. No one, not even Buffett, knows exactly when the next drop will happen. But he knows it will happen. And that's why he prepares in advance. You should think the same way. What matters isn't predicting the crash with precision, but being positioned when it comes. Lastly, invest in your financial education. Learning to read economic signals, analyze company financials, and understand how market cycles work will put you far ahead of the average investor. In times like these, information is more valuable than any asset. The average investor doesn't need to predict the future, but they do need to build a strong foundation in the present to withstand the storms ahead. Because, as Buffett says, it's only when the tide goes out that you discover who's been swimming naked. The psychology of the investor in times of crisis. More than technical knowledge or access to large resources, what truly separates successful investors from those who fail is mindset. And nowhere is that more evident than during times of crisis. When the market crashes, prices fall, headlines spark fear, and pessimism floods social media, most people panic. They sell at the bottom, buy at the top, and act impulsively. But Buffett and Munger teach the opposite. It's precisely in those moments that you must keep a cool head and stick to your principles. The average investor's biggest mistake isn't choosing the wrong assets. It's how they react to market fluctuations. Volatility is a natural part of the game. The market moves in cycles, and crises are inevitable. What determines your outcome is how you behave during those cycles. In moments of euphoria, many buy just because prices are rising. And in moments of fear, they sell just because prices are falling. This emotional behavior destroys wealth, and it's the exact opposite of what great investors do. The psychology of a disciplined investor is built on 3 pillars. 1. Long-term vision. They know the best results come with time. Buffett often says his ideal holding period is forever. He invests in businesses, not price movements. 2. Emotional resilience. When the market drops, they don't panic. On the contrary, they see opportunity where others see danger. They understand that falling prices don't always mean falling value. 3. Strategic clarity. A prepared investor has a plan and sticks to it. They know why they bought each asset. They know what they expect from it. That's why they don't change direction every time there's a scary headline or gloomy forecast. This clarity is what allows great investors to grow even in times of crisis. They don't try to predict the future. They build strong positions based on fundamentals and wait, with patience, with discipline. As Charlie Munger once said, patience is a superpower in the world of investing. Remember, the market rewards those with nerves of steel and a calm mind, and punishes those who act on impulse. If you can control your emotions, you're already ahead of most. Because in the end, it's not the market that defines your success. It's how you respond to it. The habits that lead to wealth. If there's one thing Warren Buffett has emphasized throughout his journey, it's the transformative power of habits. He believes the difference between those who thrive financially and those who struggle isn't about salary, talent, or luck. It's about the behaviors repeated daily. Buffett often says that we all live by our habits, and financial habits, in particular, shape our economic destiny in a silent but profound way. The first and perhaps most important habit is frugality. That doesn't mean living in deprivation. It means spending consciously. Buffett, with his billionaire fortune, still lives in the same house he bought in 1957. He doesn't need extravagance to feel successful, and that sends a clear message. It's not how much you earn, it's how much you keep. The second habit is watching small expenses. Many ignore small amounts, forgotten subscriptions, daily coffee, or impulse buys. But these tiny financial leaks over the years amount to thousands wasted. Buffett has said he trusts those who can manage pennies more than those who mishandle millions. The third habit is making money work for you. That starts with understanding that saving is just the beginning. Real growth happens when you invest what you've saved. Even if you start small, With consistency and time, the results compound thanks to the power of interest. The fourth habit is continuous learning. Buffett reads 5 to 6 hours a day. He's always studying, watching markets, analyzing companies. He knows the world changes, and if you stop learning, you fall behind. Investing in yourself is the best investment anyone can make. Another fundamental habit is planning. Before spending, Buffett calculates not just the monetary cost, but the time cost. If something costs $5,000 and you earn $25 an hour, that item represents 200 hours of your life. Is it worth it? That mindset helps make better decisions and avoid impulsive purchases. Also essential is the habit of maintaining an emergency fund. Buffett says, "Liquidity gives freedom." Having money available keeps you from going into debt in emergencies and allows you to take advantage of opportunities when they arise. Beyond that, Buffett values habits linked to human behavior, being patient, disciplined, avoiding comparisons, and acting on principles, not trends. He doesn't invest just because everyone else is. He follows his own analysis, and that independent thinking is, in itself, a powerful habit. Finally, one rarely mentioned but crucial habit: surrounding yourself with people who share these values. Buffett has said he prefers partners and friends who think long-term, are ethical, and have healthy habits. Our environment directly influences our choices. Being close to people who value stability, growth, and integrity is a silent accelerator of prosperity. These habits may seem simple, even obvious, but it's the basic principles, practiced consistently, that produce extraordinary results. The good news? Anyone can adopt them. It doesn't matter how much you earn or where you are right now. If you start today cultivating habits like these, the rewards will come, sooner or later. The mistakes that keep you poor. If good habits build wealth, bad habits are the surest path to destroying it. And the most alarming part is that many of these behaviors are so common, they seem harmless, but repeated over time, they keep millions trapped in financial stagnation. The first mistake is spending before saving. Most people receive their paycheck, pay bills, satisfy immediate wants, and only then, if anything is left, think about saving. But there's rarely anything left. Buffett flips this logic. Do not save what is left after spending. Spend what is left after saving. That simple habit changes everything. Another common mistake is buying status. Expensive phones, brand name clothes, financed cars, often bought not out of need, but to impress others. But as Buffett puts it, if you buy things you don't need, soon you'll be selling things you do. Living above your means is a silent poison. Another serious mistake is taking on debt impulsively. Long-term installments, high-interest loans, and poorly planned financing are traps. Debt isn't always the enemy, but when used without strategy, it enslaves. Buffett avoids easy credit whenever possible. He advises, if you can't afford it in cash, maybe you're not ready to buy it. A common mistake is neglecting self-development. Many stop investing in knowledge, courses, or reading, and this directly affects their income potential. Buffett considers knowledge the safest and most profitable asset there is. Those who don't evolve will inevitably be left behind. Lack of financial control is also on the list. Living without a budget, without knowing where every penny goes, is like driving in the dark. What isn't measured can't be improved. Without financial clarity, bad decisions stack up quickly. Another error is following the crowd in the financial markets, buying because it's going up, investing because it's trendy, getting into crypto or stocks just because they're hot. Buffett warns, the market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. And finally, a fatal mistake: believing in shortcuts. Getting rich quickly with little effort is a dream sold by many, and the downfall of so many more. Real prosperity is built, not won overnight. It requires time, consistency, and maturity. Avoiding these mistakes is just as important as adopting good habits, because what you choose not to do can be just as defining as what you do. Recognizing and correcting these behaviors is a crucial step toward escaping the poverty trap and starting your journey to financial freedom. Financial survival strategies. In times of uncertainty, having a financial survival strategy is no longer optional. It becomes a necessity. When markets falter, prices soar, and economic stability is at risk, what separates those who endure from those who collapse are the choices made in advance. The first of these choices is smart diversification. This doesn't just mean spreading your money across various investments, but allocating resources strategically across assets that behave differently in times of crisis. Stocks of solid companies, well-located real estate, inflation-protected government bonds, and international assets make up a more balanced portfolio. And for those seeking even more protection, precious metals like gold remain a historically reliable store of value. The second strategy is maintaining a liquid emergency fund. This reserve should cover 6 to 12 months of your fixed expenses and be readily accessible, preferably in low-risk, high-liquidity investment. In times of crisis, this fund prevents debt, provides emotional stability, and allows you to seize opportunities when prices plunge. Another fundamental strategy is to reduce debt, especially high-cost debt. In a scenario of inflation and rising interest rates, holding debt with variable rates can be extremely dangerous. Interest quickly eats into your budget and prevents financial progress. Replacing expensive debt with cheaper alternatives or paying it off as a priority is a direct way to increase financial freedom. It's also essential to protect yourself with anti-crisis assets. These include companies that offer essential products and services: food, energy, healthcare, transportation, and hygiene. These sectors tend to be less volatile because they keep operating even during economic downturns. That's why Buffett invests in companies like Coca-Cola, Kraft Heinz, and energy providers. He knows people keep buying these products even during recessions. Another key point is cutting non-essential expenses, reassessing your lifestyle, eliminating unnecessary spending, and optimizing your budget increases your margin of safety. This conservative approach might feel limiting in the short term, but it's what ensures resilience during critical time. As Buffett once said, "Do not save what is left after spending. Spend what is left after saving." Ongoing financial education is also part of the strategy. Learning how to interpret the economic landscape, understanding the impacts of monetary policy, and developing critical thinking put you ahead of the majority. Investing in courses, books, and reliable sources of information should be part of your budget, especially during instability. Finally, adopt a mindset aligned with survival, patience, preparation, and discipline. The rush for quick profits, fear of missing out, and the search for shortcuts are the greatest enemies in times like these. Those who survive a crisis aren't the fastest, they're the smartest. These strategies won't eliminate risk, but they shield you from the worst effects of a collapse. And more than just surviving, they position you to thrive when the tide turns. Because in the world of investing, the winner isn't the one who runs the fastest. It's the one who knows where to step when the ground starts to shake. The future. According to Buffett, what's still to come? Warren Buffett isn't known for making apocalyptic predictions. On the contrary, he's famous for his cautious optimism and long-term vision. However, in recent years, his strategic moves, public statements, and more defensive posture have made it clear that, in his view, the crisis isn't over, and the worst may be yet to come. According to Buffett, markets work in cycles. After every major boom, there's a correction. And after each correction, the market resets. But sometimes, euphoria lasts too long, inflating prices and feeding false expectations. That's what happened before the 2000 crisis. And that's what we've seen again after the pandemic, with trillions of dollars pumped into the global economy and asset values, especially in tech, soaring. To Buffett, we are now living through what he calls the second phase of a collapse. The first phase happens when warning signs appear: rising inflation, falling consumption, banking instability, and increasing interest rates. The second phase is the deceptive calm, a period where everything seems stable, but fundamentals continue to quietly deteriorate. Then comes the final phase, the visible collapse, when the problems can no longer be hidden and market confidence is permanently shaken. He points to three main short- and mid-term threats. 1. Persistent inflation. Even with rate hikes, prices keep rising in essential sectors like food and energy. This puts pressure on consumption, reduces purchasing power, and slows the economy. 2. Explosive public debt. Governments, especially the US, are operating with massive deficits. With every new stimulus package, debt grows. At some point, creditors will demand higher interest, which could completely destabilize public finances. 3. The tech bubble is still correcting. While some stocks have already dropped, Buffett believes many companies are still overvalued and that the market hasn't fully priced in the risks of a prolonged slowdown. To him, this is not the end of capitalism. It's a period of cleansing, where illusions will be shattered and fundamentals will return to center stage. Those who are prepared will see this phase as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Those who ignore the signs will pay the price. The message is clear. The time to position yourself is not when the crisis is front-page news. It's now, in the silence, while most still believe everything is under control. The time to act is now, given everything that's been laid out. The looming risks, past mistakes, and the warnings from those who truly understand the market, one unavoidable conclusion emerges: there's no more time to wait. If you want to protect your wealth, your future, and your financial peace of mind, the time to act is now. Most people only take action when it's already too late. When markets crash, prices explode, and banks stop lending. But successful investors do the opposite. They prepare beforehand. While everyone else relaxes, they strengthen their defenses. And that's why they survive the storms and thrive when the sun comes back out. Warren Buffett isn't waiting for the collapse out of fear. He's waiting with cash. Not because he knows exactly when everything will fall apart, but because he knows that eventually it will. And when it does, he'll be ready to buy what everyone else is desperately selling. That's how he builds wealth in crisis cycles. You can do the same, on a scale that matches your reality. What matters isn't the size of your portfolio, but the quality of your decisions. Start by reviewing your investment. Cut excesses. Reinforce the fundamentals. Replace fragile assets with resilient ones. Eliminate bad debts. Increase your liquidity. This isn't about panic. It's about maturity. The economy, like life, moves in cycles. And in every downturn, there are hidden opportunities for those who are emotionally and financially prepared. Also, don't underestimate the role of time. The sooner you start positioning yourself, the better your chances of riding out a crisis safely. And even better, coming out stronger than before. Patience is powerful, but it must be accompanied by preparation. Now is also the time to strengthen your mindset. Acting in a rush, out of fear or impulse, can be just as dangerous as doing nothing. Set a plan, execute it consistently, and stay the course, even when the news is grim and the market seems chaotic. Remember, tomorrow's millionaires are positioning themselves today. And what will set you apart isn't luck. It's your ability to anticipate problems and act wisely before they explode. Economic crises come and go. Some are mild, others devastating. But all of them, without exception, present two paths: fear or opportunity. The difference between those who collapse and those who grow lies in preparation. and in how they respond to uncertainty. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger show us that success doesn't come from haste or brilliance. It comes from discipline, patience, and the ability to think independently. While most act based on emotion, they act based on principles, and that's what has kept them consistent for decades. You may not have billions to invest, but you can adopt the same mindset. You can build your own foundation. You can create your plan, avoid common mistakes, and protect what you're working so hard to build. Don't wait for the collapse to start moving. Because when everything falls apart, those with vision, reserves, and strategy will be the first to see what others will only realize later. The best opportunities appear in chaos. Financial freedom isn't a finish line. It's a continuous construction. And every step you take today is a brick on that path. The habits you form, the mistakes you eliminate, and the discipline you build will define your financial destiny. Remember, there is no crisis that lasts forever, and no prosperity that never ends. But there will always be room for those who act with intelligence, focus, and preparation. So now the question is, which path will you choose? If this video helped you see things more clearly, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And in the comments, write, "Today, I choose to take control of my financial life." This could be the first step toward a real transformation.